Alright guys, so welcome back to the channel. Today's project is going to be a slightly different one. So this video we're going to talk about 5 main reasons why your snowblower won't start after being stored for the summer. In the number 5 position, we're going to talk a little bit about compression. So compression is something that all internal combustion engines need. You need to be able to compress the fuel-air mixture in the cylinder to make it much more volatile, and when you fire off the spark plug, then it creates basically a mini explosion within the cylinder that drives the piston down and continues our rotation of the engine. So to check for compression, there's a couple of easy ways to do it. And then there's something that requires a specialty tool. So the first way to easily tell if your machine has compression or not is just by pulling over on the handle. Okay, so you can see this one comes out a certain way, and then it actually is quite a bit harder to actually pull at one point right there. So that's the compression stroke on the engine. So if it provides quite a bit of resistance at some point while you pull it over, it's likely that your engine has decent enough compression. Another way to check to see if this machine has compression would be to access the spark plug hole. Okay, the spark plug on this particular machine is going to be down back behind here, so you'll have to find, there's your spark plug wire right there. So you're going to have to find, I don't know if you can see it in there, but there's a spark plug boot. Okay, so you'd have to take this shroud off. You take your spark plug out of the cylinder. It doesn't require a specialty tool, just a spark plug socket, probably usually a 5/8 or 3/4 inch socket. And you can pull out that spark plug. Now, you might need 2 people for this, unless you have an electric start, but what you can do is you can have one person put your fingers over top of the hole, not in the hole, spark plug hole, but over top of the spark plug hole while the engine is turning over. If there is good compression, you will feel quite a bit of airflow, and your fingers will actually pop off when it's pushing the compression out of that spark plug hole. So that's another way without any tools that you can check your compression. So the last way to check for compression is a specialty toolkit just like this. This is a compression tester. So you've got a gauge here that hooks up to a hose, and you just have to find the proper fitting that goes to the end of that hose, and it actually fits into your spark plug hole. So you get this off Amazon, maybe 25 or 30 bucks, not that expensive. If you suspect compression, I would maybe go down this route. And then once again, you screw that into the spark plug hole, and when it's screwed in, then you can either pull over on your cord maybe 5 or 6 times, or even better yet, if yours has electric start, hook up the electric start to that and then take a reading. Now, some of these machines have what we call a compression release to allow some of that compression when you're pulling over the engine manually. It allows some of that compression to escape just to help relieve some of that pull pressure. But that's why I say if you can spin it fast enough with the electric start, you're going to bypass that compression release, and you'll get a true reading on the compression. Now, if you're doing it with the electric start, if you have anything less than probably about 100 psi on that gauge, you probably have a compression issue. If you're pulling it over and you get anything less than about 70 or 80, I would say you might have a compression issue. Alright guys, for reason number 4 why your snowblower might not be starting after being stored is the primer system. The primer system is pretty essential for the starting of these machines. I mean, if this, check the condition of the primer. This bulb should be nice and supple. It shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be cracked. When you push on it, it should come back out pretty much right away. If it's staying in, then there might be something wrong with your primer system. These things are fairly easy to fix in most cases. This one in particular, you would probably have to take off this cover and then pop this primer bulb out. There's a line, an air line attached to from that to the carburetor, and you just disconnect that, put your new bulb in, reconnect the line, and put your thing back on. So just double check, make sure your primer system is working properly. Alright guys, so reason 3 why your snowblower might not be starting is the ignition system. Alright, so obviously you need spark to have an internal combustion engine to run. So for this thing to get some spark, first thing you got to make sure you double check is that you actually have a key, and if there's a key, make sure it's in, okay? Because believe it or not, I understand that this seems very logical, but in some cases people bring me machines that won't start and the key is not turned on, or it's broken, or they've lost it, or whatever the case may be. So obviously make sure there's a key, because if there's no key or the key is out, then that will actually get disengage or disable the ignition system. The next thing that you might want to check is your spark plug. Okay, so spark plug here, you pull off this boot down here, and then you hook up one of these things. It's very cheap off Amazon, less than $10. It's an ignition tester. Okay, so this will check your ignition system to see if you have spark going to the spark plug. You take off that boot, you put the boot end on this guy, and you put this boot on your spark plug. Then you turn over the engine a couple times and you look for a red glow. There's a light bulb in there that will come on if you have ignition while you're pulling the engine over. The engine doesn't need to be running, you just need to be turning the engine over, and that will produce the spark. Okay, so if this thing is lighting up, there's a good chance your ignition system is working just fine. Alright guys, so the number 2 reason why your snowblower is likely not starting has to do with the fuel system. Okay, our fuel nowadays, especially if you cannot find any ethanol-free fuel, this fuel, it has ethanol in it. It's basically an alcohol byproduct made from corn. They mix it in. It's better, cleaner fuel, or it helps for emissions. I understand the reason for it. The problem is it has an affinity to water. Okay, so if you store your machine outside and for some reason, even if it's not covered, or even if it is covered, you get a little bit of water or condensation buildup in this tank. That mixes in with the ethanol, and then that ethanol in the fuel will start to gum up. All right, so that's going to lead to our next issue, but specifically with regards to the fuel, if you've left fuel in there from last year, even if it has stabilizer in it, and stabilizer is just a byproduct, something people think it's snake oil. I don't think it really does all that much to preserve the life of the fuel, because there is a lifespan on this gasoline, and nowadays with the ethanol, it's actually not quite that long, or not as long as you would think. 6 months, it definitely starts degrading, especially if it's been sitting for some time and not being mixed up or anything like that. So the quality of the fuel is probably not good if it's from last spring or winter season and it's been stored with that fuel in here. I would probably drain out the fuel to start with. The second thing is, like I said, it could have some water in there, and that could be preventing the fuel from being burned properly. So another thing is that some of these machines have a fuel shutoff. All right, so again, it's an easy thing, kind of like the key, but you want to make sure that your fuel is actually turned to the on position. Okay, so just make sure that you have the fuel flowing to the carburetor. Alright guys, and for my number one reason why your snowblower is not going to start for you after being stored all summer long has to do also with the fuel system, but it's a dirty carburetor. Okay, so if you stored this machine with fuel in the tank, okay, left the fuel valve open, and there has been fuel left sitting in this carburetor all summer long, especially if it's got any ethanol in it, there is a very good chance that that fuel is broken down. The ethanol has actually started to gum up all the little ports and passageways in this carburetor. This problem accounts for about 90% of the no start issues that I see that come through my shop. So guys, I can't stress this enough. If you are going to leave fuel in the tank, make sure A, it's non-ethanol fuel. B, you turn off that fuel valve, the shutoff valve, and you run the machine out of fuel, meaning you run it until the carburetor runs out of fuel. Because then it's going to use up all that fuel. There's not going to be any fuel stored in this over the winter months, over the summer months. And then when you go to fire it up in the winter, you turn that fuel valve on. You actually allow some fuel to go into this carburetor, and hopefully, as long as the fuel is in okay shape, this will fire right up for you. Okay, so hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was informative. And if you're looking for fixes to any of these 5 common problems, you can search on my channel. I do have videos pertaining to each and every one of these particular issues. Maybe not exactly for a snowblower, but a lot of these small engine systems are very much the same. So hopefully it was informative. If you liked the video, please show me a little love. Smash the like button down below. If you're not a subscriber and you like this kind of stuff, then please consider subscribing. That also helps me out. So until our next project, guys, take care.